Edgar just finished, so I figured we can
Nice.
so they don't just get stuck waiting. Oh, also we're live. Hi people.
Hello. Is this not a fine morning / early afternoon for all of us?
Early afternoon.
It's already.
It's 6 a.m. here.
It's still 11 here.
It's I finally found a time when Jerry's asleep. Jerry is the cricket, by the way.
Author. Oh my gosh. Good morning.
Hello.
Y'all can hear us, see us. I almost said smell us, but that would be weird. It's not that early. For those
Technology is not
mistakes.
advanced enough.
Yeah, fair.
Mm-hmm.
A good brunch time. Fair.
Truly taking the world builders hostage.
This whole weekend is just me taking various world builders hostage. That's all it is. That's all.
I mean, I'm having a great time. I've developed Stockholm syndrome very quickly.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. I guess we can do a little intro for everybody. Hello. Welcome. Oh, I probably should have looked up what stream is next. This stream should automatically redirect to the next one afterwards.
It's state building, isn't it?
Ah, okay,
Yes.
okay. State building.
After that, Bib's back on with me and Miles to talk about flightless birds.
Yes, back to back streaming. It'll be good.
I don't know how Bib's doing this, honestly.
I was asking him last night because I calculated how many hours we're on stream and we're both doing 16 hours, but his were more like front loaded earlier. Like I only streamed twice yesterday. He was like, I'm actually doing really good. This is way easier than I thought. And I'm like, great. I'm so glad you're not dying because I was worrying about you.
Oh,
yeah, Bib is locked in.
The hard bit for Bib is like, I think the live streaming bit, whereas I feel like for us, I'm quite used to live streaming at this point. I'm just like, have I remembered every fact correctly in my brain?
Yeah. Bib said that surprisingly, streaming has been really easy for him. He's a natural.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's superhuman. I don't know how either of you are doing it. Not that I'm not having a great time, but 16 hours of a great time is a little bit more than what I can handle, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's better than the last time I did this when it was only me and I did like 12 hours on Saturday and 12 hours on Sunday with a couple of like breaks to get food. So like,
whoa,
this is way better.
That's real streaming.
Oh
my God.
You held yourself hostage.
Yes, I really did. But yes, this is Worldbuilding Food from field to kitchen to table as part of the Worldbuilding Festival. We have slides and we'll go through each section and answer questions. So you can either throw them in chat and we'll kind of go back and compile them or like wait till the end of each section. 16 hours of a good time in certain raves. Wow, I could not do that. Being around like people in real life for that long would be awful. Like you all are like doable because you're not actually here with me. So, but,
so yeah. No, I'm imagining myself in a rave for 16 hours. I don't think I'd live.
I know I wouldn't live either.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I wouldn't survive an hour.
No, I know. Like I get migraines. Like I can't even walk into like a children's arcade. Like I'm just like, oh God, migraine.
I have my support blanket with me, and it's the only thing that's gotten me so far.
Yeah.
Not for the weekend, I mean in general.
Yeah, fair.
I'm very British with my support cup of tea.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Oh, it's masala tea.
I had coffee like an American.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
I know, I'm sorry.
I remember something we were going to do for the end of this. We were going to do some live food world building based off prompts that I prepared ahead of time. Forgot about that. We'll wing it at the end if we have time.
I think we can just have a chat. People love
To be
just
honest,
having
I
a
forgot
chat.
about that too.
That's true. A chat can be fun. Yes. Okay. So, we should probably all introduce ourselves. I'm Madeline James. This is my channel. I'm a fantasy author. I do world building stuff. That's my introduction.
Okay, I'll go next. I am.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I didn't know what order we were going in. I am Hannahsmth. I also do world building stuff, and I have a YouTube channel under that name that you can see written by my my webcam that is currently turned off.
And hi, I'm Jake. I am usually conlanging on Let's Have a Bouba, also known as LHAB. LHAB is usually what we call it, or LHAB, or Will said LHAB yesterday, which I've not heard before. But anyway, stunning. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about food.
Yeah.
That was all three of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. I
It
kind of
is
like
early in the
zoned
morning,
out for a
eh?
minute. I was like, what's even happened? I got up too early. Okay.
Oh no.
So wait, who's first? Hannah,
Hannah.
you're up first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Shall we go through the first two slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh
so,
yeah.
Should you do it or should I?
You do it.
Okay, so content warning for the whole of the video. We will be describing references to blood, harm to animals, and also slavery, which I think two of those are in my section. And the other one isn't. So I'm the danger here. Yeah, so we'll be starting with the field, from field to kitchen to table. All of our food starts with farming, foraging, or hunting. Foraging and hunting are, of course, the older originals, and then farming came around around the Neolithic Revolution, roughly 10,000 years ago. So starting with the OGs, we will be talking about foraging. Foraging and hunting are similar in that for most of human history, as I said, they used to be our only option, with both methods being highly seasonal and fairly unpredictable methods for gathering sustenance. With foraging, the types of food that were gathered would range across everything that was edible, from underground tubers to roots and bulbs, to young green plant shoots, leaves, fungi, and entire wild plants like those of the Lactuca cereola, which is the lettuce line, to resources from larger vegetation, such as inner bark, sap, fruits, and berries, to resources taken from animals, such as honey, eggs, and mollusks, and even sizable amounts of insect life, depending on your environment. Next slide, please. Yes. Oh, you're already ahead of me. Ignore that. Nothing's gone wrong. Just a banging noise. Resourcefulness was, of course, a necessity for foraging, and the times of plenty were equally matched by their times of famine. The late dead winters in temperate and colder biomes would be almost entirely barren, short of buried, frozen bulbs, and the occasionally preserved, if questionably so, fruit and berry found under the snow. The needles and stems of very specific evergreen trees, like the conifer, and the inner phloem or cambium bark of some trees like those of the birch, the willow, and pine. Similarly, you would have peak foraging times, like in mid to late summer and autumn, where these fruiting seasons would lead to bounties of fruits, nuts, fungi, berries, and wild plants. Of course, these rules are very much localized to biomes with more extreme temperature changes throughout the year. And in environments closer to the equator, foraging can be a much more stable source of food. Since while seasonality is still a factor, there will be a wider range of options than in biomes that only have growing seasons for part of the year. There were also ways to preserve the food that was foraged, and wild cereals such as wheat or rice and even acorns could be processed into flour that can then be transported and preserved, and was even a staple food during our prehistory before agriculture was even a common practice. Foragers could also take a more active approach to foraging by protecting edible plants from pests or other animals, or weeding out potential hazards from around them in order to improve their yields and environment year over year. This concept can then be expanded into a whole other practice known as the maintaining of food forests, but that is something we will touch on later. Foraging has one other major downside aside from its seasonality and unpredictability, and that is that it cannot sustain larger groups of people on its own. But humans that survive off of foraging are pretty good at looking for patterns, and this can help with what would otherwise seem relatively completely unpredictable. For example, tracking the amount of rainfall in a certain area can help foragers predict how much the plants would have grown and developed in that area. And if a particular tree was heavy with fruit one year, statistically, it's unlikely to produce as much in the next, which means they know to get while the getting's good and then not return the next year, potentially. And from there, we get to move into hunting. The benefit of being omnivorous is that humanity has the option of turning it to hunting and trapping on top of foraging and crop farming to ensure a well-rounded diet. Hunting also serves as a discipline and a skill, and its benefits far outstretch past the base desire for food. The meat, of course, makes for good eating, and by volume supplies a much higher number of calories, minerals, and proteins compared to plant life. But there are also many, many cultural and traditional associations and practices that come with the art and practice of hunting, from the fact that it involves taking another living creature's life to the idea that the hunters themselves gain something more than just the animal from the art of hunting, whether it be personal, physical, or spiritual growth. There's a reason so many cultures over the course of history considered the act of hunting a rite of passage. There are also many different types of hunting, ranging from seasonal hunting for large migratory herds like reindeer to hunting for small undergrowth animals like rabbits, birds, and other smaller creatures. Each type of animal requires specialized hunts that can involve single individuals or even the collaboration of several different groups in order to do a much, much bigger hunt. An extraordinary example are the desert kites, which were these gigantic traps made with stacked rows of stones that allowed the hunting of a massive number of animals at once. And as for the actual bounty won by hunting, every single part of it can be used for a variety of foods, and just as importantly, tools. Moving to the next slide, content warning for gross food preparation depictions. We are talking about the uses of different kinds of meat. The prime cuts of meat from any medium to large animal, such as the belly, loin, rump, flank, haunch, ribs, shanks, and shoulder meat, and many other cuts, will be the first to get eaten or preserved for later. But organ meat, such as liver, heart, lungs, kidneys, stomachs, and intestines, as long as you empty them first, are typically filled with assorted nutrients, minerals, proteins, and vitamins that can also be incredibly healthy to cook and consume, along with the cheeks, the eyes, and the tongues. The bones can be boiled into a mineral-rich broth. The fat can be saved for use in frying or to add flavor to other foods. Even the marrow within the bones of larger animals are highly calorie-rich and absolutely worth cooking. And not the first thing we picture when we mention hunting, the art of fishing is also relevant when talking about sourcing food from animals. Fish are a fairly reliable source of food from both fresh and saltwater sources. The tools to catch them vary across cultures and technology, from large-scale fishing nets and boats, to fish traps, to single fishing lines, hooks and rods, to spear fishing, to even just your bare hands and a lot of patience. Fish as a whole provide excellent sources of protein, fatty acids, and other essential nutrients, making them an excellent hunting substitute for the much more labor-intensive mammals, depending on your catchment method, of course. I don't think your hands and patience are going to be as easy on the body. A particularly unique type of fishing is whaling, practiced by some cultures along migratory routes, with the meat of a single cetacean able to feed 100 people for an entire year. And then we get to the matter of preserving your meat once you have it properly butchered and ready to cook. This can be done a number of ways, from leaving cuts of meat buried in salt barrels to remove moisture and cure it, to smoking it, air and or sun drying it, or freezing it if you have the means to. Other less effective short-term methods include tying the cuts down and leaving them under cold running water like a stream, storing them in cool underground caves or tunnels, or simply wrapping them up in waterproof material and burying them underground. The science of food preservation has been around as long as the need to preserve food has. And when it comes to cooking, these assorted methods can drastically change the taste and common cooking methods of a culture. And from here, we get to go to farming. The much more recently developed and the most important method for sourcing food in our modern day is farming. Farming was a practice that developed alongside the last two we covered, and in some places in history were even unpopular enough to be abandoned, since farming alone tended to reduce the variation in the diets of the groups that practiced it, as they would typically only have access to a small number of crops that they could domesticate. It was only once human groups and populations began to grow in size enough that creating food in bulk became an absolute necessity did farming and agriculture become the juggernaut that it is today, fully replacing foraging in the modern day. Domestic livestock and poultry farming also act as a replacement for hunting, allowing for the care, raising, and culling of docile animals in place of inconsistent and precarious returns on hunting. But these methods took a long time to perfect and is one of humanity's greatest achievements in that we managed to domesticate not only animals, but also thousands of different crop species and variants for our own benefit, and essentially kicked off humanity's eventual taming of the entire globe. Right, the basics. The more... when it comes to something as easy to learn but hard to master as gardening and animal handling, it's important to know the basics. And when it comes to crop farming, there are dozens of factors to consider. First, every domesticated plant species and subspecies is different, some incrementally, some drastically. Some are hardier than others, meaning they can survive imperfect environmental factors like poor soil or overnight frosts, while some are more fragile and can be killed off by existing in a place with slightly too little sun or water or soil with the wrong pH level. Roses are pretty infamous for this, although apparently they're not actually that difficult to grow. It's just that they have a reputation of being very difficult to keep alive, or flower. Many plants evolved to grow in very specific environments, and so keeping them in or as close to that native environment as possible is your best course of action. A lettuce plant will not survive well in arid climates with plenty of sun unless they are a drought-resistant variety that has been intentionally developed to live in that type of soil and temperature. Next is the type of soil the plants are being grown in, as each type comes with their own qualities that can be either beneficial or detrimental to the plant life. Soil also comes in different levels of quality, and growing the same crop in the same soil will eventually deplete the field of that quality until the field must be left alone for at least a season in order to recover. This is known as letting the field sit fallow. Some plants must not be grown together in the same field or else they harm one another, while some can be grown together because they actually assist one another and help maintain the soil's health. For example, lemongrass is a great companion plant to a number of herb, berry, and fruit plants, as they prosper in similar conditions, and the lemongrass acts as a natural pest deterrent. Speaking of, domestic farms have many pests, some insects, some birds, some rats. Historically, they have been major obstacles and the cause of many illnesses and famines. Thankfully, though, nowadays, they aren't that much of an issue, unless you happen to be a farmer. Most communities or families, when homesteading specifically, have to prioritize a few key crops when it comes to farming. And that's typically the cereals and the grains. They require the most land because they are going to be the bulk of what the community and their livestock will consume over the course of the year. For example, farmers in medieval Europe typically planted a variety of crops in this bracket. Why? Rye, wheat, and oats were grown in equal measurements in temperate Europe, while in places like Scandinavia, where the growing seasons were shorter and the soil less nutritious, hardier crops like rye would be the most popular. Any other vegetable crops that can be grown on smaller plots closer to the homestead, as they will need more attention over a shorter period of time to grow, and cannot be stored long-term or left to dry in the fields like their counterparts. Single fruit trees or entire orchards can be domesticated and maintained as well for the entire community, containing fruit, berry, and nut trees alongside shrubs or vines such as the blackberry bush. This is also where more variety can be given to your community's food, as depending on what is currently being harvested, it is common for communities to be completely drowned in a single vegetable, fruit, berry, or nut, which is why preserving and serving such produce was such an important part of life. Whether that be in glass jar preserves, jams, picklings, through sun drying, freezing, canning, salting, or fermenting, or making a lot of specific recipes where that is the main ingredient. That's why we have like rhubarb pie, kind of. Right, so the environment and biome your community lives in has a huge impact on the kinds of crops you grow and what times of year you grow them in. In temperate biomes, for example, annual crops such as wheat would take an entire year to grow and be harvested at the end of their life cycle, from plowing and fertilizing the fields in mid to late winter, depending on your soil type, to sowing your annual wheat fields and vegetable gardens in the beginning of spring. Later, in mid to late spring, potential new fruit trees and berry bushes can be planted in the orchard. Then the rest of the season and half of the next would be spent maintaining, doing a lot of weeding and watering the crops either by hand or through irrigation. And around early to midsummer was when your orchard trees would need to have their branches pruned, encouraging the tree to grow quicker and produce more fruit. Is it pronounced orchid or orchard? And have I been saying it wrong this whole time?
I would say orchid.
Oh, I would say orchard.
Isn't orchid the plant?
No. Yeah,
The
sorry.
flower?
I thought you meant the other one. Yeah, orchid.
The other one? You only grow orchid trees. They are not trees. You have to put them on the trees, and then they are parasites.
I
So
like
it was
it.
a very common practice in the medieval era to only grow orchids. They didn't need any other plant. Sorry, I had a little bit of a because I was in the last stream, the archaeology, the Neolithic stream, I called them sedimentary villages instead of sedentary, and I felt very dumb. And then I had a very bad moment. Anyway, moving on.
Oh no.
It's fine. We can laugh at our mistakes. Where was I? Later in the year, there were two major harvests. The first happened at the height of summer and was the hay harvest, where the hay grass would be sheared and stacked in the fields to dry in the sun, before later being rolled, packed, or bundled up and stored to be used as animal bedding and feed. The second, much bigger harvest was the autumn wheat harvest. It was grueling work that must be done from dawn until dusk by every single person in the community, and was essentially a race against the weather, since once the temperature dropped too far in the evenings, or if the rains fell too heavily that year, it could ruin the crop entirely. And if it's your only potential source of grain, potentially lead to a winter starvation. After the harvest, and with the food safely harvested and stored away, comes the early winter, and with it, the butchering season, where select animals that had been reared are taken to be butchered and prepared, with some of it being cooked immediately to be eaten, but most of it being preserved through salting, smoking, or other methods mentioned in the hunting section, so that it would last throughout the entire year. But of course, this is a very basic overview, and the schedule changes depending on whether you are growing an annual crop that only has the lifespan of a single year or less, or a perennial plant that can live for multiple. Different plants also work on different schedules. For example, rye must be planted in autumn and left to lie dormant over the winter, only to grow and be harvested early in the spring. Each plant requires different things. Many of the plants in your vegetable garden will take around 90 days or 3 months to grow, but this differs heavily depending on the crop. Brinjals take 90 days but will die instantly in frost. Cabbage takes 90 days at minimum, but are fairly fine in cool, moist conditions and can handle their frosts, making them an excellent winter crop in Mediterranean or South temperate areas, but a spring or summer crop in northern temperate or taiga biomes, with carrots being the exact same way, but more durable to warm temperature climates too, meaning you could grow multiple crops of them over the course of a single year. Each crop, of course, needs a certain level of fertility and health in the soil to grow, as I mentioned earlier. And this is why sustainable farming requires the rotation of crops and the existence of fallow fields. Typically, the factors that make good soil is the structure of the dirt, whether it be loamy, clay, dusty, or sandy, as well as their nutrient levels, their pH, organic matter, and microbial activity. Of course, most cultures in history didn't know this exactly, so they would eyeball the soil instead and learned which crop grew best in which soil. Rice grows best in rich soils that are able to hold on to moisture, while root vegetables like potatoes, carrots, and radishes grow best in sandy, loose, and well-draining soil. And this can then go on and on and on, depending on any species of domesticated plant that you want to grow. And moving into livestock and poultry care, their key requirements are food, water, and shelter, enough land for grazing and moving around, a well enough insulated, preferably clean and maintained and dry indoor space to protect them from the cold and rain, enough tree canopies or man-made shelter overhead to protect from heat and sunburn, enough water either from a naturally occurring source or regularly cleaned troughs, and enough dry, mold, and insect-free feed and hay to assist in comfort and any remaining peckishness the animal might have. The bar is terrifically low, and yet even today people seem to be hitting their heads on it, and it would probably help to have a human around who is experienced in noticing behavioral changes and medical emergencies in the animals as well, since they are also susceptible to diseases or outside aggravators that might upset them. A typical rule is that if they're sticking to a routine, they're happy. However, if they deviate from that, something is wrong. It also helps if that person knows how to deliver a pregnancy as well, but we can't be too optimistic. But that's just for larger to mid-sized livestock, your cows, your goats, your sheep. These needs and rules differ depending on the species you're working with, especially when it comes to grazing spaces and fenced up paddocks. When it comes to poultry, many farmers let them run loose since they can be trained to return to their roosts at night. But there are a lot of predators out there that snack on poultry. So many more farmers with the resources to do so will fence up their birds as well. And lastly, we are at pests. Pests such as insects, rodents, and larger animals and birds have always been the minor annoyance to the major enemy of the farmer. Some, like the rootworm, aphid, or beetle, can be completely catastrophic to have on the farm and are the reason we use pesticides today. But others are simpler to manage. Some farmers historically have dealt with common pests by finding predators for them. For example, in Arabia around 1000 ACE, date farmers transported cultures of ants from the local mountains into their plantations so that they could prey specifically on a different species of ants that was attacking their date palm trees there. Of course, most farmers would typically use cats, ferrets, or dogs to manage rat infestations, while birds were kept away with either the famous scarecrow, trained dogs, local toddlers, and children in the community who had nothing else better to do. Or noisemakers like drums, bells, or sticks tied together like wind chimes. Today, rat poison and traps work much better than children, but we still have to use tinfoil on sticks to keep away the birds. Progress. And that's my section.
Very nice.
Thank you.
I like the thought of trained toddlers just running around.
Well, what do you think they did before we had school?
Yeah.
It's very cute to like find that sort of stuff in history. I was like, oh yeah, they would just like send off like 4-year-old Timmy into the bushes.
Yeah, has anyone got any questions? I did ask earlier and I didn't see. Oh, here we go.
That's one question.
Ooh, that's an excellent question. So I did do a little bit of looking into it. And it's kind of difficult to say. Typically, hunter-gatherer groups could be as large as, well, as small as 50 people and as large as 100 people or more. So 100% depends on the area that they're in and the amount of food in like the local area. If they're living, like I said, closer to the equator, there's probably more food that they can have access to forage. But yeah, no, typically it seems like 100 is about the maximum that it was able to support, depending on like if you're consuming both foraged foods and hunted animals.
And that's for like a community group, right? So like an area versus like a single person, right?
Yeah, yeah, an area versus a single person.
Mm-hmm.
I'd add that like some of this we don't really know very well, simply because like I'm aware of developments in Amazonian archaeology that point to much larger communities than we have today, that were more, to be fair, many of them were more sedentary, and they had some agriculture, but it's quite hard to do in the Amazon. And so kind of if you have your food forests, then they can kind of you may be able to have much larger centralized communities with organized foraging, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Did I not talk about food forests?
I think it was in there. I know it's in your script.
And then I said I would touch on it again later, and I know I wrote a section on it.
No, you only said the word food forest once.
That's tragic.
Well, you have until Jake and I get through our parts, and then you can have a reprise of food forest.
Where did it go?
I know I think they came up as the.
It did come up, and I did edit a paragraph in. That's crazy. Huh. Fascinating.
No,
okay. Anyway, I'll let you guys move on.
In the making of the slides, which is absolutely true for my section, which I think let's just like carry on and then we can chat more generally later.
Yes.
Okay, let's go. So cooking, why cook food at all? So basically, I want to preface this because if you start saying that like to be human is to eat cooked food and where would we be without cooked food, you do leave out quite a lot of people who have diets who maybe predominantly most of their calories coming from raw foods, which for example in Inuit cultures and there's specific commonalities between people who tend to eat these raw foods, which is that they have to have access to something that's super nutrient dense already. And also a lot of it is about cleanliness. So one thing that makes cooking food particularly useful is that the process of cooking it breaks down a lot of things that would harm us, whether that's pests. I mean, I don't think that people are necessarily cooking the weevils into their bread necessarily. If you can remove stuff. Prepared would cover all of this. But like raw food, like things like salads are very popular in India now. But if you tried to eat a lot of raw vegetables with well, the access to clean water was better before the British came, I will admit. Well, arguably. But anyway, you can't really eat a lot of salad if you don't have clean water to wash the leaves in, basically, is what I'm getting at. And certainly I have many Chinese friends who refuse to eat raw leaves because they think that it will make them sick. And it comes from these kinds of cultural associations of raw food as slightly more dangerous. I mean, that's not true for everyone, of course. Like the real thing to remember is that everyone has different opinions on food. And so there's going to be a counterexample for everything I say here. Okay, let's go for the next one. We weren't sure where to put flavor in this whole section because like part of me was like, maybe it should go to Hannah because a lot of flavor comes from these aromatic compounds that tend to be found in plants and stuff. You obviously have kind of other big sources of flavor, like proteins, particularly those which have been cured or dried. But I think like you get a bigger variety of kind of chemical compounds in plants because they're often from like specific defense mechanisms that have been developed. So like with chilies, one of the theories is that they wanted the fruits to just be eaten by birds. And so they made it really irritating to mammals. And then they had this study with putting chili on food to stop squirrels eating it. And some squirrels developed a taste for the spicy nuts. Even though it hurt them, like they kept going back for more and even more than they would have done before. So like if you're thinking about non-humans, they might enjoy the sadomasochism of chili oil as well. One thing that makes these plants different to your kind of main crops is that they are quite often less pleasant to eat. So if you look at the Sichuan peppercorns at the top, they're kind of quite tough, quite nubbly, and I have bitten into one whole before, and it is an interesting experience that I would not suggest for everyone. And then underneath, I've got this chili oil, and chili oil is one of my favorite condiments, and the compounds can infuse into the oil and make it all delicious. But obviously, some of them, like herbs, is a good example. Obviously, if your herbs become old, they're going to be more like a salad leaf. But mostly we eat herbs when they're very easy to bite through. And so you don't necessarily have to cook them a lot. Although in Iranian cuisine, people do cook down their herbs a lot into stews and things. So you can work with these in different ways. And the other counter to the grounding thing is salt. Of course, people do use fine salt because it dissolves immediately. But sea salt, like large chunks of sea salt, are actually quite useful for fermenting and things. Okay, next slide. You can also increase the amount of flavor in things by processing them. So the key thing is the Maillard reaction, which is basically that if you take amino acids and the natural sugars and you apply heat, they will be delicious. And that deliciousness is basically because the chemical reaction that happens takes the amino acids and turns them into a huge variety of these aromatic compounds that I was talking about before. And so this browning and also roasting, which is what adds to the flavor of coffee and chocolate and sesame oil. This is a really important process in kind of developing flavor. That's basically Samin Nusrat. And then smoking is also very important. One of the things that Michael Pollan says is basically that for a huge amount of human history, we would have cooked most things with an open fire, and the smell of smoke would have been deeply ingrained in how we experience food. So basically, it also serves to preserve things very well, as Hannah covered. And it also has a kind of symbolic resonance. So when you look at Mesopotamian cuisine, like the relationship between like providing burnt offerings to the gods, I think gods. I don't know enough about Sumerian culture really to be talking that much about it, but that process and the process of kind of grilling or roasting meat is very in parallel, and you kind of share something with that which is above us all if you use that kind of metaphor for stuff through that process. Next slide. And then there are other forms of preservation as well, which really concentrate flavor. So again, if you know sort of that acid heat, you'll know that fermentation, pickling, curing, all that stuff is really good at bringing out new, like sharp flavors in our foods. And on the contrary, well, fermentation and pickling basically add liquid that, and anyone who's like tried to ferment stuff will know that some of it is just like trying to push all your vegetables underneath the layer of the the liquid that comes out of them, so that they don't, like, if anything pokes out, they'll quite often rot, basically. Whereas curing and drying is about taking the moisture out. So whereas for those two, the acid and the salt stops things from growing, curing and drying basically says if we get the water out of it, then it can't rot. So Andean cuisine, I've got the chunyo on the, actually no, this is tunta. So chunyo is the most famous kind of freeze-dried potatoes from Andean culture. And tunta are these white ones. And I think they're treated with lye or something to make them that color. I didn't think that they were going to come up yesterday with Bib, but and then you also have jerky, or in Quechua, charqui, which is another kind of like dried meat. So yeah, let's go. And I agree with Texamantium on drying mushrooms. So you can then add into the cooking process, what do you gain? Cooking for many cultures is a kind of medicine. You see this with Ayurvedic practices. You see it in Chinese traditional medicine. And when you think about like making people soup when they're sick and stuff, like we know that what you eat has an effect on your kind of health and well-being. I thought I could put like a picture of ginger up on here, and then I tried to check if like Western biomedicine could confirm this for me. No. I found out that there were far fewer medical benefits for eating ginger than I thought there were. But anyway, um, so these nutrients, we can't just think of like the macronutrients. Like a lot of the micronutrients come in the form of these spices and the variety of plants that we eat. And so without them, it's difficult for us to survive. But how exactly the medicinal stuff links into your food culture is something that you can tailor to your culture. So with the Harappan culture, we have evidence of these very early masalas made with garlic, ginger, and turmeric. And I think it's really cool because it's not the sort of stuff that, like, a lot of what you hear about is like thinking about what is the energy coming from, whereas the carbohydrate for energy, I said energy already, where's the protein coming from? But like focusing on these aromatic plants actually leans a bit more into the cultural side of food and cooking, which I really enjoy. And then you also have this yin and yang effect in Chinese culture. So it's not just what you eat. So yang foods would be things like pork and oil, although that's also leading into the cooking stuff. Oh, I should have put the list of what these things are. For Toxamantium, this is ginseng on the bottom right. And so there are yin cooking processes as well. So things like, I think boiling is yin because it's mostly with water, but they try and balance things out. So you kind of you could I mean, I feel like a lot of cultures aim for balance because it does often work. But say that you want to do a lot of symbolism or something, you could very heavily lean into a certain kind of food for a certain event, for example. Next slide. Where do we cook? So I'm finally at the actual kitchens. Enjoyed the picture of the prawns. I thought it was very pretty. When I called this kitchen, I then realized quite quickly that I didn't want to say you have to have a kitchen to prepare food. The spatial distinctions that we make are quite, I would say, culturally specific. I mean, a lot of cultures have kitchens. There are specific specific rooms for cooking in helps contain things like smells, and also if you have servants who cook for you, it creates a kind of physical distance between where the work is done and where the elites will enjoy the food. And there's also all of these cultural values about hygiene. So in the UK, we find it very strange that Americans refrigerate their eggs, and they have to be told to take the eggs out of the fridge before they make a cake or something to let them come to room temperature, because in the UK, we don't wash our eggs. And so they're like, they have whatever's on the chicken at the point of creation still on them. We'll often find feathers and things. And for a long time, the UK would mostly buy brown eggs because we considered them to be more natural, and we thought white eggs were some kind of American scientific like creation. And now we're eating more white eggs in the UK, and it's quite funny because I hear all these people saying, I don't know how we trust them and things like that. Sorry, Felix, you may have to store your eggs in the refrigerator if they are washed.
I mean, if it helps, we also don't wash our eggs here, so it's exclusively the Americans who are weird.
I agree.
We are special in a lot of ways.
And
I also don't know what salmonella is, and I know it's a very big deal there. Just don't eat raw chicken.
Well, in the UK, our eggs are mostly salmonella free, so it's actually. But also, I see so many Americans who like care about protein, deciding to just slurp up raw eggs for gains or whatever. So I don't know what they're doing or if they're all going to get salmonella. Anyway, this chicken and butt stuff stays on the outside of the egg. Anyway. Also, it's a cloaca, which is a LHAB special word. Anyway, they also have kinds of it's basically like a knowledge-based idea of cleanliness. So like when you know that the vein in the shrimp is its like digestive tract, you really don't want to eat it. So before I knew this, I would quite happily eat a whole prawn that hadn't had the digestive tract removed. And as soon as you know it's there, you're suddenly like, why haven't you taken the digestive tract out? And to be fair, like with small prawns, I think it is often considered to be more optional. But basically, like especially if you've ever watched cooking shows, you often get people who don't know this stuff, and they'll accidentally serve an uncleaned prawn to one of the judges, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, you've left the vein in the prawn. I can't possibly eat this disgusting stuff." And yeah, it's very much about what culturally your people are prepared to eat and what they aren't. And it's also, like, as I say in the slide, a negotiation between consumer and seller. So like you have to trust someone to prepare food for you if you then buy it and eat it. And if in a society things are like sellers are generally following standards, you can really like trust that. But as soon as you have kind of economic pressures thrown in, people will try and add stuff into food. And this has happened in many societies, in many places. And the law will try and stop people from doing this. There's an issue with putting, I think, lead in turmeric powder in India at the moment. Or in China, like people are making blood tofu and they're putting stuff to coagulate it in it, which isn't safe for human consumption, and then selling it at markets. And it's like stories like this have eroded people's trust in things. So also control of the kitchen is quite an important part of things. Okay, next slide. So going back to this kind of idea of distinctions, here we have a picture of the Gibson Desert. I did my best to try and find an area of the Matu people's Mura, or traditional lands. But basically, you have this history in Australia where the indigenous peoples were often forced into a more sedentary life. And it's had quite big effects on people's health outcomes. Because in these small towns, in what might be considered, like, we often have this term like food desert, which is very, very real for a lot of people, where they don't have access to high quality foods. But the slight irony of that is that in the Gibson Desert here in Australia, the Matu people knew how to hunt for iguana, bush turkey, kangaroo, and live a life like eating off the land and having a very healthy lifestyle. And then they return back to the towns, and many of them suffer with non-communicable diseases. And one of the things that made me think of them is that they won't bring cooked food from the country into these settled towns. So there's a kind of strong. No, they don't take raw food. So they might cook it in country, and then bring it back with them, which means that like you have quite a strong spatial marking between where certain foods should be cooked and where they shouldn't be. If we move to next slide. Another important thing is centralization. So on the left, we have a tawa with a roti on it, which is like a very typical way in northern, I'm going to say northern and western, but I don't mean West India as West Indians define it. Also, not West India in the Caribbean. I mean, like around Mumbai, there's still more a rice culture, as far as I'm aware. But if you think of like food in like Punjab, in Haryana, in Kashmir, they have more of this bread culture, and one of the signs of a good wife will be a woman who knows how to make perfectly round roti, and she'll cook them at home by herself on a tawa, on a stove like this one. Basically, to create traditional style Indian food, you really have to have a woman who's prepared, and it is basically always a woman who's prepared to stay at home and cook all day and make all of these different things and plan when they're going to ferment stuff, when they're going to boil certain things, when they're going to go to market. And it's done on a more individual level. Mine are not very round, McCain. And then on the left, and I wrote down the name of this oven in French so that I wouldn't forget, and then I haven't checked my slides recently enough to remember. This is a four banal. I hope that was passable to any of the people who actually speak French in the audience. And these communal ovens basically were owned by the rulers of these areas in France, and they were the only people who were able to run these ovens. And it did mean that basically the kind of fuel usage is a lot more efficient, but it also means that the kind of higher ups in the hierarchy, I'm forgetting all the correct words for this stuff now. I do not know nearly enough about this period in French culture. Anyway, basically, you then don't have to have like someone in each household tending to a personal fire. You can just like shove all your bread in one communal oven. That's also, ovens like this one often are on all of the time, because it's a lot harder to get the fire started, or it uses a lot more energy than it is to just have a persistently on oven. And this is also where like a lot of dishes in pots and trays here came from. So like the term boulanger potatoes in French cuisine is basically because you could prepare your potatoes in this dish at home and then put them in the boulanger means like baker. You just put them in the baker's oven until they're cooked, and then they're like done and delicious. Anyway, next slide. I hope I got my point across. So for a lot of history, cooking has been really slow. Because we've had to breed plants a lot to make them taste nice without having to do too much to them. Like a lot of these plants are originally like not necessarily trying to be eaten, particularly in the leaves. And so you have a lot of bitter vegetables for a lot of history. This is actually my own picture of me. I think this is my Burmese pork curry, but anyway.
Whoa.
If
Can I
I'm
have some?
remembering correctly. So if you can't like stop your animals from walking about or seeing the sun, which is what we do to veal, or like, I say we, like specific people in Europe particularly, will like keep their baby cows in dark rooms chained up for the perfectly pale piece of veal meat. But anyway, if you're eating an animal that's done a lot in its life, basically, you're gonna have to cook it for a long time to break down the kind of like, again, words are failing me, like the connective tissues. So
Joints?
yeah, specifically
I don't know.
joints. Yeah. It's how you get things like gelatin out of bones and stuff. And I also wanted to say that like fermentation and curing, they're really useful because they take a long time and then stuff lasts for a long time. I have tried making kimchi a lot at home, and it's taken ages for it to get anywhere near as fermented as it should be, because I mean, to be fair, I think I've probably tried making it at non-opportune times of the year. But like, you like for a good fermented kimchi, it can take anything up to like from a couple of weeks to a month. And even then, like for some recipes, you want kimchi that's really, really old. And so you have to kind of really think about the ways that your culture is preparing food for a lot further in advance than you might think. But then on the flip side, for dosa batter in India, you can make a dosa batter and just leave it on the counter from overnight, and it will be prepared by the next day. So yeah. Whereas in the UK, like if I tried to do that, I think it would take a week for it to get anywhere near as bubbly. Next slide. Sorry, Maddie. Can I have the next slide, please? On the opposite side, cooking fast is a valid option, but there are specific reasons why you would need to cook a lot faster. So basically, if you don't have a lot of fuel, like firewood, which is what happened in China, it can really benefit you to have very intense heat for a very short period of time. And a lot of this is about how you prepare your foods for like basically cooking for a quite short amount. And yeah, in prehistoric China, they had more wood and they were cooking for fewer people. So this develops over time. Like it's not really possible to to say like for the whole of Chinese history they've been using woks, because it's not true. Like specifically the kind of wok in the picture, like with the gas burner, like that's like very, very recent. But there's like a whole kind of language of cooking techniques, some of which I have not found good translations for, like liu. So rather than like a lot of Westerners, when they stir fry, they just dump everything in. But with this one, you'll basically cook your food and your sauce separately and then combine them. The other thing to consider is the medium that your foods are being cooked in. So oil has a lot higher heat capacity than water, which means that if you cook something in oil, it will be cooked a lot faster than if you're cooking it in water with the same kind of, well, I don't know about the same kind of heat underneath, because you have to get the energy there somehow, but you know what I mean. And I wanted this picture to show you, like, the other thing is that if you use a less refined oil, so the oil on the left, to be fair, they aren't made with the same parts of the plant, but this is made with the fruit of the palm oil palm. And you can see that it's basically got loads of solids in, and they will burn if you try and cook too hot in it. Whereas on the right is our refined palm oil, and you can cook a lot of stuff at a lot of high heat very easily with that, and that's why we put it in everything. Um, and the one on the left has flavor. The one on the right does not. And so knowing kind of technologically how good they are at processing oils and things is going to make a big difference to how they kind of approach this. So yeah, next slide. Okay, we're on to the butchery part again. So one of the big spatial distinctions is basically about animals. So in some cultures, it's just the animals themselves were considered dirty. In others, people would live in houses with their animals, which is quite typical in China. And basically, yeah, as I say in here, plants tend to be less transgressive because they stay where they're put for most of them.
Usually.
Yes. And then kind of, yeah, which animals are problematic is complicated. Like, there are cultures that love having dogs in the home. There are others where they're considered unclean and should be kept very far away from people. Same with cats. And with butchery, in many cultures, like, we know that there are certain parts of the animal that are favored and will take higher prices and go to the elites, and there will be other parts which are considered worse and they'll be kept for people of lower status. And this is very changeable. Like, we've seen it since World War II and the breeding of a lot fatter chickens. Chicken meat is a lot more praised now than it used to be. Although people did used to think that, like, having a really old hen was make for a very delicious soup. And also chickens now have a lot less flavor and they're a lot more plain than they used to be. So village chickens are widely famed for their, like, more gamey flavor, basically. So like how these people raise their animals also will have a big part of how how they think of them. And yeah, basically, like, again, on the offal, like, offal is really good if you need a lot of nutrients, but it has quite a strong flavor, and so some people will, and also it has the associations with blood. So even if we might know that like the blood doesn't go through this, well, there is blood in. I don't know enough about this either, but anyway, people will like have different cultural values on these different parts as well. If we move to the next, and as I promoted in Bib Stream, read Purity in Danger. It's very good.
Sorry, one comment. What do you mean you eat chicken happily without any spices? Who are you?
Poached,
what is your life like?
Okay, poached chicken can be really good. Poached, like, and also when people say without spices, it's also not always obvious what people mean by without spice. Because like if you mean like unseasoned is like gnarly, but like if you have like salt and fat and like good, like a good chicken as well, like depending on the quality of the chicken, you'll have a different amount of flavor in the meat to actually work with, right? And that's me defending spiceless food as a British person, which I know is very stereotypical, but but like and also like if you prepare the chicken very plainly, you can then add other stuff. You can eat it with other things that like complement it basically. Yeah, like if you have a sauce. But like a chicken gravy is not spicy for most people's definition. So yeah.
Okay. Kat, I want you to know that just to spite you, I'm going to be eating lemon chicken tonight. Because I thought about how I would spice chicken, and now I want lemon chicken. So this is your fault.
Okay. Next slide.
Sorry.
So who's cooking?
All right, and I'm gonna abandon you on this slide for a brief moment.
Okay. So one of the things that's like easy to forget is that basically before the world wars, food production was not nearly as we didn't pre-process quite as much as we do now. So we created huge excesses of food to kind of keep up stocks in these wartime periods. And then after the wars, we were like, oh, we've made cows that produce huge amounts more milk than we need because no one's drinking milk powder products anymore. And like, and so they start to saying, well, what if we process it for people? And then and then like we sell it to them as an easy and convenient way to eat like cheap cheese, I think is like one of the big examples in America now. So before this, and one of the things that happened is that processed foods were initially sold as a kind of emancipation of women from the kitchen. And so when we demonize these processed foods, I feel a bit worried because I don't want to be like, yeah, get women back in the kitchen and cooking for their families all day, because that's absolutely not going to work now.
Yeah.
But also, like, there is a whole lot of history where a whole lot of women and enslaved people did a whole lot of cooking for a lot of men. And it's basically very important not to forget that like there is a reason why elites had so many servants, and a lot of them would have been dedicated to things like cooking. So yeah, like depending on how long you have like people, how many people you have able to help you cook stuff. Like imagine if like they didn't have mills, and so they're having to grind the flour themselves, right? Like a lot of how you a lot of how you yeah, I think that it's probably I imagine it's delicious because it's going to be a lot fresher than anything that you can buy in a shop, right? And also like there's bleach and stuff. But anyway, um um I don't know where I'm going with this. Let's go to the next. Oh, court cuisine. Like court cuisines, there's not been that many of them, but a lot of our regional ideas of food tend to come from the developments of court cuisines. So from the Chinese court, the Ottoman court, the French royal court, a lot of them developed particularly elaborate recipes that would then become symbolic of what like good food looked like in these countries. But then on the other hand, where you don't have these royal cuisines, working class food, things that are often called peasant food, tend to also become more symbolic, often in rejection of these upper class traditions. So like a lot of Italian food is cucina povera, which is like poor people's food. And then you see different patterns in different regions. So like in Korea, the popularity of bibimbap is associated to a push by the Korean government to promote Korean court cuisine as the model of Korean food. And it has all of these pretty colors and it's nicely laid out. But in reality, like most Koreans weren't eating a huge amount of bibimbap, or specifically bibimbap in that style, before this push by the government. So it's not like it should be one or the other. You can kind of play culturally with what makes sense. Next slide. Yeah, back to butchery. So the people who do the butchery are basically considered polluted. We've covered this, I think, like maybe 2 or 3 times already. Certainly, like the topic of barakumin and shaming people who are like tanners has come up before. But basically, yeah, like the discrimination against people who are butchers persists in Japan. Yeah, it's. I feel like we've talked about this. If you have questions, you can ask them. Because I've got more on butchery that I don't think we've covered yet here. So let's go. In India, like meat is highly political, basically because of the introduction of a politics around vegetarianism that is very difficult for Muslims in particular, but it also affects Christians, who neither of them have the same tradition of vegetarianism. And it's also quite casteist because it's usually higher castes who have historically practiced vegetarianism, whereas in lower castes, meat eating and also eggs is a very controversial point, are a lot more widely consumed. So this picture is from the British Museum's collection, and it depicts a qasab, which is like a Muslim caste of butchers. And the British really like actually not just the British, like a lot of the colonial groups loved making these kind of collections of portraits of what each of the castes looked like in various societies. You see it a lot in Latin America as well with casta paintings. they're quite interesting, although obviously what they represent isn't particularly great. So next slide. There's also like associations of contact with dead animals, particularly bovines, and the creation of dalit or scheduled castes, untouchable castes, avarna. The best resource I have on this is specifically about the Mahar, which is also the caste that B.R. Ambedkar belonged to. And if you don't know who Ambedkar is, you should read more Indian history, basically, because he's a very important figure in modern Indian history and the caste movement. And also, I can highly recommend the Dalit kitchens of Marathwada. I found it really interesting. If you want to know more about caste and food and how the Dalit people eat in central or no, like Western Maharashtra. Yeah, next slide. Time. I feel like I've already talked about this. I think I doubled this one up. Yeah. Oh, Mateus, it has loads of recipes, but the recipes are for things like boiled spinach, and it will say spinach, salt, put some water in a pan, add the spinach, add the salt, and then it's done. It's like, what do you do with that? Anyway, next slide. One of the other parts of temporality are things like these, like, so bolinhos de chuva in Brazil and pajan in Korea are both these like fried foods that they make when it's raining. So I was wondering why these are both associated with rainy day foods. And I think it might be that frying is often associated with the sound of the rain. But also, I suspect that part of it is that if you're having a bad day where you can't go out, you might like just get your oil out and just start frying shit because you can. And pajan is really easy to make with like pajan is specifically the one with green onions, although most Koreans would have pa, which are like these, they're like spring onions, but they're huge. A lot of them for just general seasoning. But you can make a jan with like a huge variety of vegetables and seafood. Himajun is really good. I really love that, and I can't find it here. Yeah. I think that's everything I had to say about them. Anyway, yeah. Next slide. I also, I don't know. I felt a bit awkward because like I didn't know how to tell you how to make these things into part of your story. Like for me, I can read recipe books and like just read the recipes and find them interesting. But like yeah, you have Shokugeki no Soma and Como Agua para Chocolate. And they're both like really great bits of media about cooking. And like the kind of, I mean, Shokugeki no Soma isn't, I feel like it's not really about cooking. It's more of like it feels like a Pokemon, but with fruit as well.
It's shonen.
Yeah. Como Agua para Chocolate. Oh, I love Delicious Indulgence as well. I have the Dungeon Meshi manga here.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Anyway,
Dungeon Meshi is amazing. Do you have copies?
I have. I thought I would try reading it in Japanese,
Oh, cool.
But it's
How's
very
that going?
slow for me.
Oh, it's so good. Can't wait for season 2.
So, Como agua para chocolate, I feel like it was really famous with like my mum's generation. It's basically the food is a big part of the magic in the world, and like it has these really big emotional effects. So yeah, I'll leave that there. Yeah, done. Jake out.
Fantastic. All right. Well, not quite out. Do we have any questions for Jake?
Did you know I would be hungry listening to this?
I know.
Yeah.
I haven't had breakfast, and like I'm awake enough now that I'm actually getting hungry, and I'm like, oh no.
I've
Like,
got a
Cool,
roast
me
dinner
neither.
coming.
yeah.
Oh, I see Eva asking, does humidity affect frying? I am not aware of humidity affecting frying. The big environmental issue I've seen reference to is issues boiling water at high altitude. And we were going to throw a reference into this somewhere. There is a Wikipedia page that's called High Altitude Cooking that is not considered to be a stub, but is seriously one of the least useful Wikipedia pages that I've ever seen. I think it just has a chart with water boiling temperatures on it. And there's almost nothing else about high altitude. So Madeline can develop a huge resource on that.
Yes, as I get into Pillar World and cooking on not that they're even that high altitude compared to many places, but you know, we'll get to it.
If the altitude's high enough, does the water boil?
It boils at a lower temperature. So people say, oh, why can't I have a good cup of tea up a mountain? And it's basically because the water isn't hot enough for the tea to infuse the way that people expect.
Oh, does it get hotter if you keep boiling it? Do you know?
Well, because boiling point is like you have an energy plateau with boiling, like because it's a change of state. This is where like my is this chemistry? I think this is chemistry. It's like all coming back to.
Oh no.
So like at state points, the energy change tends to be more slower, and then you get like rises within the state. So like you can get water from like ice, like 0 degrees C to 100 degrees C, like at like sea level quite easily. But if the higher up you go, the lower the boiling point is. And so no matter how much you boil the water, it will boil at boiling point, which is lower because of the higher altitude. Because the gravity is it? No, it's not gravity. It's not the gravity. Is it the gravity is lower? No, pressure, air pressure. It's yeah. I am not a physicist. I think that was physics. Yeah, the water becomes steam. Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah.
I don't know if we had other questions. I think we're good to move on.
Yeah, I managed to summon Nemo by talking about cast again. Yeah, like I'd say like looking at regional food is really interesting, particularly if you have an idea of what a particular food is. Like certainly with Indian food and Chinese food, absolutely, that you can go to smaller and smaller regional levels and you'll see basically more and more specific foods, because having foods spread is the unusual thing. Most of them are like plants will spread, but specific recipes tend to stay quite local. Although people will innovate the same stuff in a lot of places. And then it's only as we've increased information technology that we can like spread stuff. Anyway, I've only given Maddie like half an hour, so you get to speed run your bit today.
Well, luckily my section is the shortest, and as a quick heads up to everyone, my slides are the lowest effort. There are like no words on them. Just be ready.
They look great.
Thank you. But yes, we are moving on to the best part of food, which is eating it. But basically, with the table, we are going to be discussing the relationships between meals themselves and cultural identity. So food is a brilliant way to show cultural and societal world building, especially when you are storytelling, which is obviously my focus. So not only does what, where, and how, and when people eat tell you a lot about a people, but it can easily come up in any story or book. Everyone has to eat. A great technique for showing social and cultural world building without the dreaded info dumping or lengthy exposition can be as easy as having your characters sitting down for a meal and interspersing the dialogue with actions associated with eating or serving or even meal prep, which will also improve the pacing. So it's a win-win, 10 out of 10, would recommend. So let's go through some basic topics to consider first. If I can get this working. Oh, wait, that's the slide that I was supposed to be on when I was talking about that. Just pretend that's what happened. Okay, so some basics. First, we have the physical table, and this pulls in what Jake said about the kitchen part, that there doesn't need to be a kitchen. Well, there also doesn't need to be a table for the table portion of this event. So question 1, is there even a table? There's also floor culture versus chair culture in terms of where and how they're actually sitting. Do individuals sit at the same table, or do they have their own tables? Are the tables round or rectangular or some other shape? And what does that say about the culture and how they think of eating? And how decorative is the table, right? All right, meal structure. There are a lot of different options here too. Communal plates or bowls to eat from, like in many African and Middle Eastern cultures. Do we have individual plates and portions, like in America and some parts of Europe? Do we have a sharing of small plates or tapas, like in Spain? Do we have courses or dish sequences? And of course, how is that going to change for different types of meals? And then we have utensils. Hands tend to be more common with cuisine involving dipping or wrapping of food. Usually there is some kind of starch between the hand and the food, be that bread or sticky rice or something like that. There are chopsticks, which tend to be more common with cuisine where many staple meals stick together or are pre-portioned. So long chopsticks are useful when meals are served in the middle of the table and shared, while short chopsticks provide finer movements to make eating fiddly foods easier. I like that word. And then forks tend to be more common in meat-heavy cuisines, originally developing for cooking meat over fire. We have knives. Similar to forks, knives are most common in cuisines where meat is served in large pieces to be cut at the table. Knives also, as weapons, can be considered unacceptable at meals in some cultures. And then spoons, obviously more common with cuisines heavy in soups and stews, etc. Don't know if chopsticks or a fork will help you eat a soup. Yeah, that fork handling.
Can if you're determined enough.
Yeah, okay. That's great. Okay, so manners. How do you show appreciation or good manners versus what are considered bad manners or taboos at the table? These same things can be poor manners in some cultures and good in others. So is expressing enjoyment such as burping or slurping considered good or bad manners? Is cleaning your plate better manners, or is leaving a little food to show you were satisfied better manners? What is specific etiquette for handling utensils and how you place those utensils on the table? Certain cultures limit mealtime conversations to specific topics too. There's a lot that you can get into there. Okay, rituals and religion. Obviously, as we've talked about in earlier streams of the weekend with how a pervasive religion can be in everyday everything. it also comes into eating as well. So cleaning and washing hands as a ritual or even a religious act, especially in cultures that typically eat with their hands, can be common as part of like a pre-meal ritual. Sharing prayers or blessings before a meal can be an important religious or spiritual part of the meal. Fasting obviously comes into this a little bit too. So then societal values, right? Eating behaviors reflect cultural values such as cleanliness, honor, so-and-so, you can go on forever. And they also say a lot about the society itself. So independence versus community. Some cultures that have communal plates or more family-style eating may have social values of community, sharing, and interdependence. Some cultures that have more individual plates or portions may have social values of independence and personal space or property. And obviously with all of this, like anything once you get into culture nothing is one way of saying something, right? You can have a lot of variety here. It's not if your culture's like this, they are going to do this thing. It's all much messier than that. Humility versus status. So there's the Pompeii vomiting between courses to eat more, although this doesn't seem to have been entirely socially acceptable and was certainly not widespread. And lavish Roman banquets with exotic foods. Food was commonly a way to show status. You can get into Confucian humbleness, so moderation, respect for resources, and mindful consumption, which, can lead to food and eating habits that prioritized, I can talk today, propriety. And then even where the foods eaten across social classes are similar, so for example, in Kumasi, Ghana, those with status will demonstrate this in other ways. Tableware, being able to employ servers, and having many different foods at one meal may all distinguish between the wealthy from the poor. So then, leisurely versus fast-paced. In some cultures, such as for many Italians, meals are slower paced and more leisurely. They're filled with lots of conversation, enjoyment of the food, and this can show the importance of maintaining social bonds and enjoyment in the culture. In some cultures, such as in many parts of America, meals are commonly fast-paced, showing the values of efficiency and convenience. So in symbolism, a big example of this is tea and coffee culture. So tea symbolizes hospitality and respect and etiquette in many cultures. And also health and wellness being important things in culture. So you see a lot of symbolism and ritual built up around things like this in some cultures. Bringing in rituals and religion again. Religious behaviors can link deprivation to holiness, leading to fasting culture. Symbolic or religious fasting, such as with communion, can also lead to eating certain foods linking to holiness and thus religious feasts. Okay, so getting on to interpersonal relationships, which I think is the most fun part. How we eat and with whom we eat can say a lot about interpersonal relationships. So think about how family hierarchy and servitude represents itself. Who eats together? In some cultures, eating separately can be a way to show differences between different groups of people. For example, in some African cultures like Ethiopia and Ghana, men and women eat separately. The South Indian Mukavar, I probably can't pronounce that properly, husbands and wives eat their food together off the same plate to represent how their identities become intertwined, symbolizing, one body with marriage. The distribution of food is an important way to show hierarchy. Does everyone receive the same portions or types of food? Are certain types of food only allowed to be eaten by certain members? Do certain members have a first choice of foods, or do others wait for them to start eating before they themselves can begin? The more equitable the distribution of food is, the more loose the familial or social hierarchy may be. Another way to show this hierarchy is through servitude. So serving food to another is a common way across cultures to humble oneself and offer honor or respect to the one they are serving. So consider who serves whom at the table. If younger family members serve elders, then age is going to give a higher social position in the hierarchy. In cultures where men are higher in the hierarchy, it is common to see customs of their wives, daughters, or mothers serving them at the table. Hosts serving guests can show the importance of hospitality and duty towards one's neighbors and their significance in the hierarchy. And then to take it a step further, feeding others can be a deep sign of affection and respect. In many cultures, even a romantic gesture in some. Seating arrangements are another way to show hierarchy. So consider what the most prominent location would be. So head of the table, near the fireplace, at a specific table, proximity to the entrance, better views, etc. And one's proximity to that more prominent location can show social rank. The most honored guests typically have the most prominent location, whatever that may be. So then conversation can be another way to display interpersonal relationships as well as manners at the table. So those with higher social rank may initiate or dominate conversations, while those with lower rank may talk less or only when invited to or addressed. And then food restrictions are a powerful way to show differences between people, but also highlight status differences. Age, sex, health, life situations, so puberty, pregnancy, marriage, etc., can all come with different food restrictions. These restrictions can be spiritual in nature, but they are also a way to reinforce and control people's social status. It is a trend in a number of foraging societies, for example, to restrict fat and protein for women, such as no fatty fish or no pork, which over time is detrimental to health and tends to spread out births and pregnancies as a consequence, which can be a form of, social manipulating and maintaining certain rates and stuff there. Okay, so sharing food. This is a near universal way to show hospitality and goodwill, which I sort of mentioned already. It is also seen as a way to define familial ties. Family units are those who eat together. So who people are expected to share with can say a lot about the importance of bonds between different peoples. If you share food with someone, they are important to you. For example, cultural taboos of sharing food or meals with lower classes can imply a harsher barrier between the peoples. Alternatively, having cultural norms of sharing food with strangers can imply more humility and the importance of hospitality among all people, suggesting all people are seen more as equals. If it was a norm to offer a portion of one's meal to any elders at the table, could imply a level of deference and honor towards elders. And sharing food with a friend or romantic interest can also be a strong symbol of their bonds, such as sharing meals being a courtship ritual in some cultures. In addition to considering how a table or meal might look different between social classes, genders, or members of a family, one can consider how different meals will differ throughout the year or the day. We'll say this part first. So there can be prescriptive foods, festivals, special meals, common foods, etc. We've kind of covered this a little bit in the earlier sections. But you can have your everyday meals, you can have feasts, you can have occasion-based meals that can all look differently and apply these different things we've talked about in different ways, such as do certain people only share meals together on special occasions, and that can help add more nuance. So then feasts, we're going to touch this on this lightly, although this was covered a lot more in Jake and Bib's earlier stream on, food world building. But feasts are a very common time to reinforce social hierarchies, among other things. So feasts can have many purposes, such as celebration, seeking partners, peacemaking, gaining allies, showing prestige or opulence, paying debts or tributes, honoring the dead, etc. Feasts commonly come with special seating arrangements, presentation, manners and etiquette, mood, etc. And entertainment such as singing, music, dancing, storytelling, etc. So you can roughly divide feasts into 4 types, although they vary greatly and can have multiple purposes, which is kind of gone over by Christine Hastorf in the Social Archaeology of Food. So the first type is celebratory, so think wedding feasts, harvest feasts. These tend to have the least overt political agenda, are more of a gathering of equals, and hosting can be a way to gain or maintain authority or social standing. Then there are potlucks. So a feast among equals where all guests contribute can reinforce equality and democracy among attendees. We can have alliance building feasts. So I think I have a quote here, but these emphasize the formal hospitality provided by those of a superior status. Essentially, these reflect asymmetrical positions and social hierarchies, reinforce social and political debts of attendees. And then we can have competitive feasts. So these can promote status differences. Hosts can lead into exotic, elite, or unusual foods or presentations to try and elevate their social standing. But basically, you can think about what kind of feasts could there be throughout the year and how will meal structures differ. Perhaps they are more or less formal. Meals are shared with more or fewer people. You can think about the motivations of the people at the meal and what they're trying to achieve as part of it. And how is the mood and tone of the meal different? Yes. Okay. That's all I have for my section. So we can go through and I can see if there are questions. I knew mine was going to be relatively quick. Yeah, feasts being influenced by ingredients available in that season. Absolutely.
There is the opposite to that though, which is like in the UK, we now associate turkey with Christmas. And turkeys do not live here naturally. They are an American product. And we took that from the Thanksgiving, where at Thanksgiving, it's a symbol partly of American identity because it's about like that feast with the natives, which we can argue about otherwise. But then the UK consumes enough media with Americans eating turkeys that we decide we're going to get rid of the goose and we're going to have one of them as well.
I mean, we did the same thing here. It's except I'm more into it than the rest of my family. And growing up every year, I go, can we get a turkey? And they go like, are you sure? And it's like, yeah. And then we get a turkey.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on the family.
Yeah.
And then in Japan, it's KFC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I discovered the lost paragraph on.
Okay, we do have one question at least I'm seeing, so let's cover that real quick and then go back to that. So I see a question on, can one show dominance through serving food? Absolutely. I mean, this is the thing with culture. Like almost anything can show anything depending on how you build the culture around it, or, you know, vice versa. So maybe it is a status symbol of being able to serve food in a culture, and it is that is a prestigious thing versus other meanings it could have of showing servitude, right? So being the one to get to serve food is a type of, you know, dominance perhaps in that culture. And you do see that a little bit in some things, like, you know, there's some cultural stereotypes with getting to carve the turkey right around Thanksgiving, bringing that back in again, that can show that like you are the one that's providing for people. And I think that's a really easy stretch. I don't know if either of you had anything to add to that, but
I think like the food traditions of the French colonists in Vietnam is like a really interesting like case example of this, because it kind of goes through all of the three layers. So the French had already established the idea of a national cuisine very early on. And so when they colonize Vietnam, one of the things that they do is they import huge amounts of wheat flour from France to Vietnam, to be able to produce baguettes there. And they build French-style ovens to be able to cook baguettes. And they prepare all of this for the French elite, basically. And they see that they basically establish their way of eating as a form of domination or prestige of their culture over the local Vietnamese culture. And then when they get kicked out, the Vietnamese take a lot of these ideas and then they repurpose it themselves. And so everyone can eat a banh mi made with a mixture of wheat flour and rice flour. and more tasty filling, in my opinion. I am not a fan of a jambon beurre, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
We've got a question from Quantum Q9. How would cooking be different for fantasy creatures who may not have the ability to feel spice? Bib has a really good video about this, and I would recommend that because he goes into some of the chemistry of it's specifically about could we eat aliens or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like there would be like there are enough chemical reactions with the bodies that like you would find some kind of lizard spice, I'm sure. Like it's not quite the same because cats of course are also mammals, but like humans do not have the same reaction to catnip that, that cats do. So you could find some like there would be something that the lizard people want to eat that like that would have specific significance to them.
Yeah. And to answer the other quick question on how long have we had entertainment while eating, I mean, I feel like there was probably a point where we were eating without entertainment, but I would think if you go back incredibly far in human history, like that's going to be a pretty common thing just from the basis of probably even before stratified society. It's a time when people gather. And so having like sharing stories, playing, instruments or singing or anything like that around the rituals of eating, right? Like eating was one of the biggest rituals. So I would imagine that that's been in place for a very long time.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, sorry.
It's also like if you're from a culture where the food is the entertainment, you might be less like I think things like music may be relatively common, but like it would depend what the focus is because like the idea of sitting down, like having entertainment around you is one thing. The TV dinner is very modern.
Oh yeah.
So like depending on what the technology is, like eating with the radio to us, like the radio on to us wouldn't be particularly weird. But you can imagine if you'd have to employ a musician to come and play while you eat, it would be it could be considered quite strange if that's not a normal thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, even in the, I mean, if you go as far back as like the Paleolithic, 1,000% you had word of mouth stories, you had legends, you had specific individuals who would be selected to tell those stories, or even entire like huge numbers of the group that had memorized stories. It could just be a regular conversation. I mean, people have always been people, so you'd always would have had those moments of socialization in that moment, those moments of just community around food and growing closer as a community through sharing food. That's always been a thing. Yeah.
Alcohol gets the stories out of people.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started on the deer urine, the elk urine.
All right. So we have 8 minutes. Do we want to? You said you found the paragraph on food.
Yes,
Go for it.
Sorry. So
do it. Speed run it.
So I don't know how I lost it. I do know how I lost it. It was I was editing things, deleted an entire paragraph, and didn't notice until right now. But yeah, okay. So food forests are essentially the cross between farming and foraging, and it is farming classified by some global cultures Historically, there have been other ways to work the land in order to provide a consistent and sustainable source of food, and this is seen most clearly through Native American and Amazonian cultures that would not only care for and provide for themselves, but for the entirety of their local ecosystem through the development of food forests. They would use regular controlled burnings, careful intentional planting of specific edible plant life and crops that already existed in that area, and carefully monitored and spaced the growth of trees, assorted foliage plants, and would ensure the best situation and health for each of those plants. Or at least the ones that were considered helpful or useful or necessary for that biome. Many cultures across the Americas were able to turn their forests into land that encouraged the growth of hundreds of varied food sources. And in some ways, it provided better resources and a healthier, stronger environment than any fielded monocrop could provide on its own. They didn't have to worry about fallowed fields. They didn't have to worry about crop rotation because they were creating a much more stable environment for all of the produce that they were farming. And yeah, by not replacing the forest with farmland, but instead creating the right conditions for the right plants, they were able to prosper much better. It was a much less invasive or destructive method of living off the land as well. And in some places today, this practice is actually being revived by the descendants of those cultures, as well as being implemented in African communities by aid groups, just sort of across areas that have less food security and less access to modern supermarkets and stuff like that. So it's really interesting. It's a very nice way to sort of be more sustainable in your agriculture, which is very cool. I think that's something that we could maybe, in a perfect world where everything's working all right, we could maybe try and do that more in the modern day. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it. The lost paragraph. Discovered at last.
Sweet.
Huzzah!
Yes.
Yay!
Yeah, like the stream, everyone. Do it now.
Yes. I put a link in the chat too for the next stream, which this will automatically go over to, which we already talked about. Also, immediately after that, we have the biogeography of Odaloo with Bibleridian and Jake of Let's Have a Boba. And then I'll be talking about Pillar World economics specifically with McCain. So if you caught the economic stuff yesterday, we'll be doing a bit more of like live workshopping that out. And then we have the diachronic drafting game on Let's Have a Boba, which is going to be really fun. I'm very excited for that. Another Langtime Studio stream talking about residuum and a retrospect there of one of the languages that they made. I think that's still what they're planning on talking about. And then we are going to wrap up the festival with some shenanigans back on this channel with me and Will of Lands Unknown talking about world building for various like paranormal and other types of like urban fantasy tropes, which is mostly just going to be silly shenanigans for funs. Yes, subscribe, like, check out everyone's Patreons, check out everyone's channels. I think everything is linked in the description below. All those things are good. Yes. I don't know if y'all had anything to add.
Can I give a small shout out to the people on my Patreon's Discord who are currently having a watch party for the stream?
That is amazing.
So thank you very much.
That's literally awesome. Amazing.
Yeah, and what else? This is my last stream for the festival as well. So thank you all so much for having me. This has been absolutely amazing. I've enjoyed every second of it.
Wonderful.
And thank you for being part of it. It's been really great to connect over this. Like, I don't think without this we would have been here chatting.
No, I don't think so. I'm really glad for it, especially for that reason. Thank you. It's been awesome. Yeah, getting to know all you guys. Yeah,
it's been great.
Yeah, and good luck with the rest of today.
Thank you.
I know you guys have a lot more to do.
Yeah. I think I've only got 2 more, so that's good.
For sure. And then I'm assuming you'll pass out for about a week.
Yeah, I've taken off the next few days. I'll be planning my trip to KopiCon, actually, is what I'm going to be doing during my break.
That's so cool.
I still need to work out what I'm going to say for that as well. Yeah, you can see me in Edinburgh if you like this. I'll probably be talking about something completely unrelated.
Yeah. I will also be in Edinburgh at CopyCon, which is exciting. If you're not familiar with that, it's a conlanging conference that David and Jesse Peterson of Langtime Studio are running, and many wonderful people of the community are going to be talking there. And yeah, it's going to be fun. You can Google CopyCon 2 conlanging. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You better, or else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, one last thing. If you thought this was fun, there is a link to my website, which has a link to sign up for the festival newsletter, which I think we're probably going to at this point, if we decide to do a World Building Festival 2, we will, or I guess I will send out information on that in the future. So if you want to be notified for next time, go ahead and sign up for that. It'll just be for, World Building Festival 2. Yes.
Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please, can we? I name everything with a 2. That it's a worm in my brain. I'll never get rid of it.
Yeah. The 2 will be bigger than everything else in the logo. It'll just be a giant 2, and then like World Building Festival, you need to put glasses on to read.
Yeah, and then the year after.
Unbuilding Festival.
Unbuilding Festival. And then the third year, the 3 will be so small you can't see it.
Yeah. It'll be like, wait, is this what again? Oh my gosh, yes. Every graphic will just have a different name for it. World Building Festival 2 into the World Builderverse. I like
It'll
it.
just get more chaotic as time goes on.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh.
That's why people got to Bib's stream. I mean, not that Bib's got such a small audience. He needs everyone here to move up.
Yeah, guys.
That's true. Help a small channel out. Help out our poor Biblaridian. Oh wait, it's on Lands Unknown.
Don't forget Artifacts.
It's on Lands Unknown.
Oh.
Go and follow. We need 1,000 subscribers to Lands Unknown by the end of the festival.
Yeah, or I'll hold you hostage midstream and be like, I'm not continuing until.
Yeah, this is a threat. Madeline's very experienced at holding hostages.
Yeah.
Go and like it.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna end the stream here. Thank you so much, everyone. Head on over to the next stream and say hi.
Yeah. Good.
Bye from us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.